So, The Wild Robot is the story of Roz, a intelligent robot that is shipwrecked on an island and completely stranded on her own. Their own, except for all of the animals on the island, right? A full teeming space of wildlife. This is a northern island, right? Big rocks, big waves, not Caribbean, not southern. It's cold, it's harsh, and the animals there are unfeeling and mean. They all have personalities, but Roz doesn't understand any of them, of course. She's a robot that's there to help, and help with any task you need. We don't know where she comes from, but she's there. The movie opens with her just kind of shipwrecked or crashed into some rocks. She meets some otters. They're kind of mean to her. She wanders into the forest. She meets a fox. That's kind of mean to her. She meets some birds. That's mean to her too. All these animals that are living and thriving in their own ecosystem want nothing to do with this monster robot until Roz meets a young gosling, a runt of the litter, right? A young goose who otherwise may not have made it out there on their own, and realizes that it's her task, it's her job to take care of this gosling, to raise them to a goose, to make sure they can eat and they can swim and they can fly south for the winter with the rest of the geese. It becomes Roz's task. And over the course of the film, we learn who Roz is, who this young gosling is, where Roz came from, and ultimately, like, if man or animal and beast or robot can become one. I do not do a great job of summarizing The Wild Robot, but I can tell you that it is a Chris Sanders picture, which is exciting because if you know Chris Sanders, he is the creator of Disney's Lilo and Stitch. He's the creator of Dreamworks' How to Train Your Dragon. He's got some big titles under his belt, all right? And he doesn't direct he only directs every so often. It's usually every 3 or 5 years. This is his new feature. It was executive produced with Dean DeBlois, who also produced How to Train Your Dragon, co-directed, I think, with Chris Sanders on that film. And now here we are. We have a visually striking feature based on a book, and I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, what'd you think of The Wild Robot?
So I was hearing a lot of buzz about this in the kind of festival circuit. It had premiered last month at a couple of them. Heard some takes, some interviews where people were really blown away by that, like in tears, in a good way, really loving the film. And I saw it a week before Zach did, and I really loved it as well. And I was really kind of blown away. The art style is incredible. The story construction is very mature. It's this idea of like, we have to work together. We have to go kind of against a lot of our instincts and nature in order to survive. And this is told, of course, with cute animals and things, but it's a larger message to kind of humanity. And I was like, I really didn't expect, a kid's film to go that deep. But very good. Not a dry eye in the house. Really excellent.
Yeah, I think the best place to start talking about Wild Robot is probably in its cast. I missed them in this summary, so here it is. Lupita Nyong'o is the voice of Roz. Pedro Pascal is Fink the fox. Kit Connor is our young gosling, or really adult gosling, Bright Bill, as he gets older over the course of the film. Bill Nye is also in the picture. Matt Berry, Stephanie Hsu, Ving Rhames, Mark Hamill, Catherine O'Hara. I mean, reads like a great cast list. And I think everybody turned out for Sanders because I think he does really fantastic work. And he seems to be leaving it all on the table here. Wild Robot is a story about survival. There's a surprising amount of death in this movie, which is weird because robots don't really live, right? So it's a funny thing for a robot to kind of learn about the idea of animals having seasons, right? Seasons of change, spring and fall and winter and summer, and geese flying north and south for that. And additionally, like, animals holing up in the winter and making sure they have enough food to stay warm, because if they don't, then they won't make it. And then the animals that work with them, a lot of that's important. And all of that happens on this ecosystem of an island that is untouched by man, right? Like, it is just animals and Roz. And from the very moment we see Roz at the beginning of the film and she's looking at these otters, like, we get this interaction. Otters are curious what she's into. They realize that she's not food and or can't help them. She may be a danger. They immediately see her as a threat. So trying to overcome, like, this relationship with animals, learning their language over time, like trying to say, hey, I'm helpful, I'm here to help you, and all these animals don't want anything to do with her, gives Roz a position of not having purpose, which is a challenge for our protagonist, who is a robot, because her whole thing is to be helpful and to help others and to serve you. That's all Roz wants, is to be helpful. And it's kind of perfect when she meets this Gosling, Brightbill, and she realizes that she has a task. Like, I have a purpose now. I'm going to help Brightbill get from A to B. It's particularly interesting as Brightbill gets older, and that's where the film really starts to develop, because Brightbill starts to realize that his mom kind of figure, Roz, is obviously different from everybody else, but that makes him different from everybody else. And he has to struggle because of that. And he realizes that having his relationship with Roz may not be as helpful as if he had just been raised in nature with everybody else. And it's this awkwardness, it's this strangeness that I think produces like an ooey gooey emotional center for Wild Robot. It's for the weird kids, right? It's for the weird ones out there, baby. Here's to the ones who dream. Wild Robot is a film for people who are odd. And I think that's good, because that creates like a good seedbed for emotional storytelling, especially in a vibrant children's film.
I think one of the other surprises is that like this movie is about motherhood of all things, because it's about Roz learning to become a caretaker, a mother figure to the Gosling, and it's about the frustration of that process. There's so many parts where Roz gets frustrated. She's like, he won't listen. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making it up along the way. And I saw it with a friend who has several kids, and it was like she was telling me about how much it just hit home, because she's like, that's what it's like, that's what it feels like. You don't feel like you don't know what you're doing, like you're not going to succeed. So it's a very poignant level of storytelling. And you're right that Brightbill, he's like a different species of Gosling, and he's smaller, and he grows up with the robot, so he talks like the robot a lot of times, which, you know, because he'll say something like hello, beep bop boop, and then like go on, like he adopts these kind of weird mannerisms. And then, you know, their relationship becomes strained as he grows older, you know, as he enters adolescence and wants to be separate. Like it's really interesting in examining that in a really kind of interesting and loving way. And I remember I listened to several interviews. First of all, Lupita Nyong'o almost ruined her voice on this movie. She had to take a 3-month break because she just kept doing too many takes, and she developed like polyps and things, and had to rest her voice for months so she could recover. But also the director, Chris Sanders, said, you know, in a lot of particularly animated films, you kill off people's mothers all the time, and that's kind of you think Bambi, and that kind of is the event that kicks off like the growth of this character. Like the mother character is killed off and just absent from a lot of these things. You have a lot of times you have single fathers for some reason, and they're like, oh, sorry, your mother died. So they were interested in like, no, we're going to keep the mother around and really focus on that process and that difficulty. And it really nails it. It's really kind of amazing.
I think Wild Robot is a film that's better for adults than it is for kids. I think I should explain what I mean when I say that. When I saw this movie, there were a bunch of kids in the theater with us. Naturally, it's a children's film. We saw it the second weekend it came out. And like just like when you go see like a big budget like Fast and Furious or Jurassic World opening weekend, you can see when other people in the theater get bored. Normally it's because when other adults whip their phones out. That's when you're like, oh, that person's bored. That person, like you can just feel it. You know, like when a scene slows down, when the action settles. And with kids, it's even easier. They start to act up, right? Like they're impatient. They don't want to sit there. They got a ton of energy. And this movie keeps it up for the kids for the first third. Great. When Roz arrives on the island, it's beautifully vibrant. Everything is in this movie, I should say. Dreamworks kind of kept on with this kind of watercolor animation look that they embraced for their last movie, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. I think that was the name of it. That is carried over here, and it looks fantastic. The colors are fantastic. Big saturation, big hues, green, reds, big lighting, I should say. Every time Roz pops on her eyes in the dark, like her eyes shoot out like laser beams, like out into the darkness. Like everything looks fantastic. Everything looks great in this movie. But kids aren't super big on big lighting, right? Like they're not going to care a lot about big colors.
Big
like
themes.
What's the action like? Yes. And as Roz like arrives on the island, meets these animals, all these different furry, fuzzy creatures that all move differently and make different sounds. That's all a lot of fun. They're very slapsticky. Like they can kind of get thrown and tossed around like an animated character would and still be okay. Like that's all very sweet. When it starts to get into its emotional themes, When we start to have long talking scenes, these kids are like, I'm bored. I want to get up and walk around and, jump around. And I see that. And this movie definitely has those. Those are the things that I think the adults are saying, oh man, it was so sweet, brought a tear to my eye. I don't recall any kids crying in The Wild Robot. I think they're mostly bored by those scenes. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing, but worth mentioning. Like I think it's uniquely a bit more an adult movie than it is a kids movie, and I think that's why it's getting a lot of comparisons to like Pixar features, right? Because Pixar notoriously makes sneaky adult movies that are shaped like kids movies. This movie, I think, chases that same high, and in a good way, in a way that I think it's successful at. I think a lot more adults will remember The Wild Robot at the end of 2024 than maybe kids will. Kids will look for something like Sonic 3, Mufasa
Right.
This holiday season. But like, I don't know if it's going to do it for them, I don't know, like Puss in Boots did, right? Like maybe not quite as like slapsticky fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, a bit of an environmental message because like this movie actually takes place in the future where we fly by San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge is underwater. So it's a place where climate change has drastically changed the world. And that's kind of, its message is about working, like there's the motherhood allegory, but there's also kind of the secondary plot about working together to counteract our instincts. And there's an incredible line in this. Some of the writing's so good, but there's an incredible line where Roz is talking to all the animals, both like predators and prey, saying like, we got to work together to survive. And she says, in order to survive, we must become more than we were programmed to be. And I was like, oh my God, like it's like a Shakespearean line. Some really incredible stuff. Yes, it is very adult in the best ways.
Yeah. And like, I know you already mentioned Lupita Nyong'o's performance, but like, it's worth mentioning the way she starts off so robotic and just slowly starts to eke into like more casual forms of speech is so slight and so well done that there's a point in the film much later where she ends up talking to a much more robotic character that's much like she was at the beginning of the film. And it's like, it's her voicing the opposite character. They both have this Roz voice, but one is this standard Tin Man that she starts off the beginning of the movie with, and the other is this developed kind of voice she's found as Roz has been on this island. It's great, dude. It's one voice actor against themselves, and it sounds so good. Like she manages to bring this kind of level of inflection to it. Nyong'o's fantastic. Oh my God, she needs more work. I'm glad she's doing okay afterwards. Also, Kit Connor. Really great. I know he's on that show, Heartstopper on Netflix. I thought he was Steven Yeun. Start like the whole movie. I was like, that's Steven Yeun from Invincible. I know those cries of charisma anywhere. Nope, completely wrong. It's newcomer Kit Connor. Dude, like great voice work. Very emotional, very grounded. Really fantastic. Like to carry in like deep messages and like deeper feelings into The Wild Robot.
Yeah, really excellent. I think I'm ready.
I know. I think I'm ready to. Andy, would you recommend The Wild Robot?
Absolutely. This is probably one of the best things I've seen all year. Probably my favorite animated film of the year. Like Eat Your Heart Out, Inside Out too. Like this is so much better on so many levels than that movie. Like it's so mature, dealing with really mature and adult themes of motherhood, of working, of community, of working together, of the difficulties of both of those things. Incredible score, incredible visuals, great voice work from our cast, lots of laughs and action. So highly recommend.
Yeah, Wild Robot's a lot of fun. I think we're going to see this again for Best Animated Feature. It's probably going to nom. I don't know if it'll win. I'm thinking of what else has come out this year. But Wild Robot, I think, is a top 5, like easy of the year. It's a lot of fun. It's in theaters now. If you have the ability, go see it. Go catch it on a weekend matinee or something. If you got a kid, maybe a niece or nephew you could take over, take them. Date night movie, like checks the box. Like Wild Robot's a lot of fun. Would recommend. Rock Solid and Chris Sanders, another banger. I don't know if it'll get a sequel from DreamWorks, but if it's anything like his other work, like Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, like almost assuredly this will get some kind of continued property. So like get in now on whatever Wild Robot's doing. Like there's something special here. It's a glimmer of quality, I think, in Wild Robot. And with that, we got one more movie to talk about. Again, jam-packed episode. We're squeezing them in here, all right? We're doing it tight like a clown car. Andy's taking the summary on this last film. Andy, please take it away.
Salem's Lot